Hello everyone, and welcome back to another exciting One Piece chapter review. After the heartbreaking and intense chapter last week, I can't wait to see what's in store for this one. So jumping right in, we have chapter 1154, with a grisly title, I Can't Even Die. I can only imagine what that's referencing in this chapter. But before we continue on with the flashbacks, we're continuing on with the cover story, the Oni Child Yamato and the Holy Inari Shrine Pilgrimage. So it seems that we're still in Ringa right now, and Okiku is accompanying Yamato and her little band of misfits, along with Boss Cho, who's guiding them towards the shrine. And I'm not entirely sure what their reason is for visiting the shrine. Maybe they're just paying their respects, or learning the history about who was laid to rest here, but it looks like we have a little bit more going on here in Ringo before we're heading back to the Flower Capital. And it looks like Boss Cho is explaining something about the shrine to Yamato and page 1. And way out in front, we see Ulti just making a giant snowball, just rolling it around. He's probably gonna build a snowman. That's pretty much it for the cover story this week. I think next week will probably be a little bit more interesting and have a little bit more meat on the bone. So let's get right into the chapter now. Alright, so starting the chapter off, we're still at 63 years ago. We're at the same time period we were at the end of the last chapter. So Loki was just born, he was just thrown off the branch of the tree, and Harald's still away from Elbaf right now too. And right now we're kind of tying everything together with a nice little bow. We see a scene of Elbaf and it's on fire, completely being ravaged. This is the day that Big Mom goes on her rampage through Elbaf, and she's the one who kills Yorl. And we've seen this before in Big Mom's flashback. It's just now we have a lot more context about, Jarl, the village of Elbaf and everything, and now we see why this is such a big deal. So pretty much right after Loki was born, Lin goes on her rampage, making it easy for the land of Elbaf to blame Loki as a cursed child. After that, we cut to a little bit farther in the year, and we see a blizzard storming across the land of Elbaf, completely snowing in every building and freezing people to death on their boats. And this is only one of the problems that Elbaf had faced during this time. Sudden fires broke out, windstorms, and the blizzards and bitter cold devastated the crop and the people, making it almost impossible to live. Over the course of the year, Elbaf had gone into a steady decline, unable to self-sustain. And with Harald gone, the leadership is very lacking because the queen has all but shut down because of her disdain for Loki. Speaking of the queen, we get to see a little bit more of her before she passes away.
No. Wait.
And the first thing she says this chapter is, "Now do you see? This is all that child's doing. This land will be cursed because you all failed to kill it immediately." All this is going towards just some random guard that's just coming to check on her. And he's just like, what? No, what the heck? He's just a kid, man, come on. It's gotta be a coincidence. And right as that guard is struggling to get that out, there's a loud crash sound, and baby Loki comes smashing through the wall, looking for attention, and immediately the queen is just repulsed by Loki's presence, screaming in terror and saying, "Oh, he's staring at me!" Meanwhile, Loki's just in the background, just acting like a normal baby, goos and gaws and crawling around, and the queen just erupts. "Take that baby away! Don't ever let that monster near me again!" And two guards have to come and grab Loki by the shoulders because he's massive. Even for a giant, Loki is huge, and even then they can't even get him under control because he's just so big. And they're just trying to drag him, and he's crying and wailing, and he doesn't understand because he's still 1 year old. So even to a giant, he's basically only a couple months old. He's just an infant still. But as the guards are dragging Loki away, the queen is just continuing to just yell and berate Loki, saying things like, "Gouge those monstrous eyes out. If left unchecked, his curse will grow until it brings about Elbaf's collapse." So I wonder if the prophecy of Loki destroying Elbaf is actually just from the queen's hysteria, and not based on anything real. But then again, the prophecy about Harald's son killing him ended up turning out true as well, so... But for now, that's enough with the royal drama. We see what's happening in Elbaf proper with the regular citizens. And there's a mother consoling her child, and they're crying from hunger. They're starving because of the famine. And the mother's apologizing because they eaten the last bit of food that they had. And the villagers are in just a massive state of unrest. And some of the giants are considering going raiding and stealing things from humans. whereas others are saying that they shouldn't be doing that and that'll bring more shame to Elbaf, that thing they've been working so hard to fix. But in the middle of these guys arguing, another band of giants from across the village, the Hunter village, start attacking them to raid and pillage them. And it seems during this desperate time while Harald's away and famine broke out, all this sort of stuff started happening more and more frequently. And we see a shadowy figure similar to the ones who were telling Harald that Harjuden couldn't be the prince. And they're saying how they heard about Princeling born in the castle and how he's a cursed child. So it seems as if the guards of the castle also believe this and are spreading the rumors around the nation of Elbaf. And it's beginning to fester and spread as more and more terrible things happen to the people.
I didn't teach him that.
Now at the same time we see Harjuden, and he's living with Ida still, and one of the giants busts into their home, and full of bitterness and resentment, he's screaming at Harjuden, blaming his brother for everything that's gone wrong in the past year or so, and that Harjuden should take Loki's place as a sacrifice to appease the gods. And understandably so, Ida is like, no way, you're not gonna take my kid. Like, what do you mean? And like a true man, this giant resorts to physical violence against a woman, claiming that she's an outsider who seduced Harald, and he looks like he's ready to execute her. Harjuden's clearly terrified because he's a lot smaller and unarmed, and he's behind a chair, but he's telling the guy to back off and not to hurt his mom. There's a quick shot of a clenched fist swinging down before we see King Harald, who's returned to Elbaf and has completely demolished this man, saving Ida and Harjuden just in the nick of time. Thank goodness. Harald makes the wise decision to address the people immediately, stating that they shouldn't fight. Harald returned home because he heard about Loki's birth and the recent struggles happening on Elbaf. He was in the middle of doing this whole diplomacy thing, but he stopped everything because of what he heard. And with his diplomatic efforts and the news he received about the crisis, he was able to convince the humans to ship a myriad of food to save the giants and alleviate their suffering. And we see ships loaded to the brim with massive bags of food just strapped all over. And of course, the giants graciously accept, and with thanks in their heart and food in their bellies, they state if the humans ever need help, it's their job to return the favor, and that in this tiny world, it's theirs to share. And now catching up to last chapter, we see the funeral of Queen Estrid.
Know your fucking place, trash.
And how she continued to publicly denounce Loki as a curse upon Elbaf, right up until the moment that Harald returned. But even after that, she still denounced her son and completely hated and reviled him. Even if people had food in their bellies and thankfulness for the humans in their heart, their cultural bias still remained, as once the queen died, everyone blamed Loki and his curse. And we see this really crazy shot of King Harald seeing his son for the first time, and we see that Queen Estrid had bandaged Loki's eyes up to make him more bearable to look at. And the crazy thing here is the guards lie. We see them lying, telling King Harald that he was born with a condition that affects his eyes, even though he just has strange looking eyes to them. And King Harald is understandably confused as to why Loki isn't seeming happy or smiley, but he chalks it up to Queen Estrid's death. And then King Harald notices he has a lot of scrapes and bruises on him, and the guards try and continue to lie about that, saying it's nothing. But we see that only after a few months that baby Loki had basically given up the idea of being loved, which is very, very tragic. If King Harald was on the island, I don't think that would be the case. Queen Estrid probably would have gotten her ass beat if that was the case. But after Harald's return home, we see Elbaf begin to flourish again, and all the labor he did with his diplomacy has ended up paying off. We see Harald setting up the branch routes right here. They're setting up branch number 1, the ones we saw earlier in the chapter of Elbaf. And on his time here, he spends his time restoring the nation of Elbaf to where it was and getting the people to trust one another again. But as Harald is prioritizing Elbaf proper and the diplomatic acts he's been fostering overseas, he lets other things fall to the wayside, meaning just Loki. And we see that Estrid's older brother was appointed as Loki's personal steward, who carried just as much hatred for Loki as the queen. At the same exact time, we get to see Haryuden and how he's being raised versus Loki, and he's living with Ida on the lower realms, where she's now currently running a tavern, giving Haryuden lots of love and affection and guidance. It's quite the juxtaposition from what we're seeing with Loki. You think it would be the opposite, really. You think the prince would be looked after very much so, and pampered and cared for and loved to no end. The quote-unquote bastard son, the one that's banished and an afterthought, is the one getting more attention and properly cared for and has a bunch of friends and just is living the good life. It really is quite tragic. But now we're finally doing a little bit more of a time jump here. We're now 56 years in the past, as opposed to the 63 we were at, or 62-ish. And Jarl and Harald are having an interesting little chat about how Harald snuck his way into the reverie. So one of Harald's friends, a king, had invited him and he snuck in as a guard. But he couldn't really ask anything because he's just a bodyguard. He's not supposed to be chatting with kings or anything like that. So if he had spoken up to anyone, he would have had his cover blown. But Harald's thankful that the attack on Marijua had happened because he was able to slip away without anyone knowing he was there. So the interesting thing here is Jarl's berating Harald a little bit here. Like, you idiot, if you had gotten caught. But we get tale of another crew out there called the Gali Raw Warhammer Company, which Harald calls a gruff troop of giant shipwrights that arm themselves with warhammers, which is interesting. I wonder if they have any connection at all to Gali Law Company that we've seen before. Maybe they had trade or something with them in ancient times, or some sort of commerce deal and they split off, or who knows. Just something to keep in mind for the future. But the connection's pretty obvious there. Gali Raw, Gali Law. But apparently they were a legend, and Harald didn't really believe it. But Jarl drops a lore bomb stating that they really do exist, and they traveled far and wide, sending letters back to Elbaf. But they sent a final letter, and it said that they've all been captured, and in their ranks included ancient giants as well, which is very interesting. Harald speculates that the government is involved, and Jarl says of course the government's involved, and that the Warhammer Company faced a great enemy one time before, but they sank into the ocean. I don't know if he's necessarily referring to the world government when he says that. Maybe it could be something more nefarious. Or even, maybe they're referring to Davy Jones. But that's just random speculation off the top of my head. So Jarl states that there's probably a deeper reason why all the diplomatic acts that Harald has been doing overseas hasn't worked out and gets denied by the government. It's not about him or Elbaf proper. Something deeper is going on. And Jarl's quick to say that these are just rumors, but there's a story about frozen giants somewhere, and that the giants are just regarded as enemies of the world. But Harald's determined to make sure that Elbaf has a prosperous future, regardless of what may lie ahead. Now we get this little interesting shot of the castle here, and what can only be presumed to be the steward, the queen's brother, as he's lovingly berating Loki, saying things like, "Prince Loki, I know you cursed and killed my little sister. Prince Loki."
Oh! Ew! Dude! What the fuck?
Being very sarcastic about the affection that he gives him. And we see a panel here, very disgusting, very appropriate for the way that this guy's drawn. I really love how Oda drew this guy, because he's just like his sister, massive pile of trash. And he's saying to baby Loki what kind of garbage he'll be serving him to eat. And we see this nice transition of Loki growing up and the terrible things that are kind of happening around him, where the horse of fortune has died during his youth, and then during his teenage years, the steward, the queen's brother, ends up being found dead in the realm of the dead. Now we don't know how he died, but I wouldn't put it past Loki to just give him the old 1-2, I'm gonna push you.
Good riddance.
But moving on here, we're doing another small time jump, this time 48 years before the current day. And with Harald spending more time in Elbaf, the country is able to prosper again, getting their identity back and bolstering trade once again. Harald's delivering a speech to the giants on the island, spreading his message of peace and unity with the world and how he wishes to change the reputation of the giants, even though it seems fated to forever be negative. And pretty much behind Harald's back we see Loki and Harjuden, along with 2 royal guards, both of which are berating Harjuden, calling him an illegitimate prince, and that Loki is the true heir. So it seems like the royal guards are just all around big pieces of crap.
Yeah, you suck. You just fucking suck.
And it makes a lot of sense why Loki decided to get rid of them in the future here. I don't know if this is during the speech or right afterwards, but Loki is in command of all the animals that we've seen before. Loki is in charge of all the animals like we've seen before at the beginning of the arc. And he's leading an assault on the villages, testing everyone's might to quote-unquote make sure there's no weaklings on Elbaf. And Loki takes no prisoners. I mean, he's about 10 years old in human years here, and he's chasing down the elderly people, he's smashing homes. He doesn't care. He's running wild, just like King Harald when he was younger too. So the apple doesn't fall far from the tree, I suppose. But there's only one person who's willing to step up and try and stop Loki though, and that's his older brother, Harjuden, who ironically is way smaller than him. But undeterred, Harjuden, full of resolve, demands that Loki step down and that their dad, Harald, went through hell to rebuild the village. And hearing this, Loki is like, what? You think you can call my father your dad? But then in the same breath, turns around and says, I don't know why everyone respects him. He's an idiot for trying to deal with human insects. And the dichotomy from earlier is played out even further here, where Harjuden acts more like the current king, and Loki is acting more like the younger, unruly version of Harald. Harjuden even states here that we should try and see everyone's perspectives, and that just because he's big doesn't mean he should get cocky. But it's not just his size that makes Loki cocky, and he proves it right now by laying the smackdown on Harjuden. And as Loki's beating up Harjuden, we get to see a few members of the new giant pirates, Gerd and Goldberg. And Gerd's actually trying to run in and assist, but Goldberg is afraid to interfere because he's scared of Loki. And seeing Gerd actually caring about and assisting Harjuden just pisses him off even more. And that's when he sticks his tongue out in his iconic fashion and starts laughing and making fun of him, continuing to demean Harjuden, calling him and his friends weak, and saying it's because of his mom's blood. And for some reason, even the royal guards are trying to get Loki to calm down, even though they'd probably said way worse to both of the princes in the past. But one of them goes a little too far and claims that Harjuden is also a prince, and this triggers Loki, causing Loki to lash out and beat down both guards. And the narration here, as he's laying his beat down, states that Loki spread pain and destruction because nothing filled the hole in his heart. And we see a shot very similar to what we saw earlier when the village was going through its famine. A mother caressing their grieving child, and Loki looking on in complete sorrow. There's a shot which, at first I thought this was a flashback to Loki's birth, and how his mother tried to kill him immediately after laying eyes on him. But the realization sets in the panel after, as we see 10 to 12-year-old Loki laying in a crater on the earth, crying and covered in blood, upset that he's unable to kill himself. That's brutal, man. These poor kids. Harjuden has it a little better because at least he has Ida to be sort of a loving backbone to an otherwise corrupt and uncaring Elbaf. But Loki doesn't have that support, with Harald turning his attention to diplomacy and Elbaf itself, leaving no time for his son. And with Harald's lack of knowledge about what the first few months of Loki's life were truly like, there's this perfect storm of isolation and desperation brewing inside of Loki, wherein the first bit of love he's ever going to receive is going to be what he obsesses over. But as Loki is crying and sobbing on the realm of the dead, he hears a voice that exclaims, "What's the deal with this island? Where's the welcoming committee?" And all the animals go berserk, growling and barking. Loki sits up and sees tiny little humans, and once they see him, they realize that they've definitely landed upon Elbaf. The first person we see is Shiki, laughing and making fun of the way Loki looks. Next up, is Whitebeard, showing a bit of that fatherly instinct. He states, "I know he's a giant, but he's a bit too big. Hey kid, why are you crying?" I'm sure if Whitebeard was just a little bit older in the timeline, he would have no problem adopting Loki into his family. The next person we see is Stussy, not the clone, the original. And the narrator states, before introducing the last character, that Harald spotted a particular person 8 years ago during Reverie, and he was the one who single-handedly killed a Navy admiral and vanished without a trace. This feat earned him a massive bounty and the government's hatred. This is the man who appears on Elbaf or Loki, the captain of the Rocks Pirates, Rox D. Zebek, the father of Emperor Blackbeard. He approaches Loki and states he's got 2 questions for him, and he's not going to take no for an answer. First question, this is Elbaf, the land of the giants, right? The second, this is where Harold's at, right? And with that question, it closes out the chapter for the week, leaving us with yet another crazy reveal in the Elbaf arc. This is why they never wanted to show Rox before, because as soon as we would have seen him, it would have been completely obvious. I know there was a lot of theories about what might happen, or what could be the cause or source of Blackbeard's power, and one of the ones I really like is that Rox is possessing Blackbeard at the moment he falls asleep. It's very similar to how Cavendish's ability works. And with the reveal here that they are both father and son, it could be possible still, but I don't know what the likelihood is of it. If anything, it just seems more likely that there's something about the Zebek family line that makes them powerful. Anyway, I would love to hear what you guys think about this chapter. What do you think about Rox D. Zebek being revealed this chapter? Is there anything that really stuck out to you guys this chapter? How about those royal guards? Those guys are real asses, huh? We don't have a chapter next week, so we'll definitely be jumping right back into it with Rox D. Zebek and Loki. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.